So yeah, it's Yaya, and today I'm here with one of my favorite FGC players and content creators, LordKnight. Today we'll be talking about the future of fighting games since it's still the beginning of the year, baby. And don't worry, if you guys enjoyed today's little podcast-like video, make sure you hit the like button and also subscribe for more videos like this. If this does well, you know, I might do more and reach out to other favorite creators because I got so many different things I want to talk about with fighting games. It's gonna be crazy. That being said, let's get right into the video. Looking to the next generation of fighting games. For a lot of people, we're calling it the big three of fighting games right now. Like the ones that we know of, at least. There's Project L, that's in the back burner, but we know it's coming. Street Fighter 6 is the one that's coming out in June. And then there's Tekken. So how do you feel about those games in relation to probably previous years? Because fighting games are everywhere, you know. So how do you forgot one, by the way. What's the one?
Unannounced NRS Fighter X. That's
okay.
Yeah. You should include that. You should
See my thing is I always include NRS anyway in the videos, but I want to know what it is first, because I'm very more tied to NRS for like the lore and the story. I'm that person. So I know NRS is probably like right now everybody's like, yo, what are they doing? What do you think it is? You think it's MK12?
I mean, it's not even so like I'm not usually like a speculative person, but okay, like, it's not that huge of a guess, right? You only have two guesses. It's a Mortal Kombat game or an Injustice game. There's only a couple of guesses you can make,
right?
And regardless of what it is, it still ties into what I think is like the future, basically. And the main thing is that it's not even gonna sound like a sexy take or anything. It's just that I think that we just seen in all media, like much media, like TV, movies, blah blah. Music is an exception, kind of, but
right.
Everyone is scared of taking risks with their money and investments. So the way it reflects in fighting games is that the only mainstream things you'll see get like pushed are either legacy franchises, or the other type of thing we'll see is that they'll take some existing license and turn that into a fighting game. So we saw that in like Dragon Ball, Grand Blue Fantasy is another one, Persona, Persona 4 Arena that you mentioned, and the new one would be Project L, right? So as far as mainstream things, I think that's it. Like you're not gonna have like stuff like Under Night in Birth, for example, is gonna be basically like really rare, I think, and more like indie than anything else. Yeah, even Melty Blood, if you think about new Melty Blood, they have not only is Melty Blood considered a legacy game because that came out in like 2004 or something originally, the first Melty Blood, so it's a very old IP, but they also have the power, like Type Moon is a big international IP now. It's not just some dude's just like game that he made by himself anymore, right? There's all of this stuff with the Type Moon license, Type Moon IPs now.
So that's interesting because I still think indie fighting games are important. What they bring new ideas or creative takes in a lot of ways. Like for example, a game that I'm really hyped for is Umbral Core. Umbral Core is a game that I really enjoyed recently from a lot of other indie games that we've had. So seeing that put into perspective, I'm sorry to the Under Night fans. Y'all gonna have to wait. Hopefully something happens. I know pretty much everybody's just praying that they put roll back in that game.
So one indie games are important, right? For sure. And there's an audience for that, for sure. It's just that there's gonna be like a lot of choice for like the type of game that people want to play, where there was a time where you didn't have like too many options. Now it's kind of reset that you have a lot of options, and like whoever wants to play that game can play that game, which is really nice. But then there's the other angle too of like, I think each era of fighting games is led by Street Fighter. So
Yeah.
So Street Fighter 6 is coming out. What like in my head is less that I care when Tekken 8 is coming out, and more that Street Fighter 6 is coming out, and a lot of the other mainstream games are going to be doing stuff based off what Street Fighter does.
Right.
That's always
so it's essentially like So it's essentially like Capcom pretty much leads, and we get a generation where, let's use 5 for example, where like, you know, that game has a very flip-floppy, weird, controversial, you know, reputation with it. And with Street Fighter 5, it was different because when Capcom, in quotations, failed, everybody started rising up and doing their own different thing. I feel like that's really unique to see where Street Fighter goes and how the other companies will follow suit with it. Because personally, my big frustration with a lot of fighting games is the content has been whack. How I got into fighting games, even like competing here and there, was arcade modes were cool because they gave you like the extra endings with characters, and that got me to like, oh, all right, I want to learn how to play this character now. Let's see who can play this character as good as me. And then I started going to YouTube when it was coming up, looking up match replays of characters that I played. People get mad when I say this. I'm like, fighting games are not necessarily good products. They're just really good for the niche that already follows them. I never understood when people said this for a long period of time until I got into content creation. But there will be people to be like, man, fighting games suck, or they're kind of dry. All you do is fight. And I'm like, that's the point. But like when you think of other games, like even Call of Duty, like, yeah, you shoot people, but they have multiple game modes layer around it. And that's something fighting games usually lack in content, and from my perspective, besides NRS, you know, and other companies are getting better at it. So I'm happy Street Fighter 6 is kind of like pushing the world tour and the character customization, because it's giving more to people that don't care about the hardcore fighting to, you know, compete or going to tournaments and things of that nature. Street Fighter usually is the one that starts to pack out, and everybody's like, all right, this is what Street Fighter 6 has done. Let's see what we can do to incorporate into our own style and our own community and player bases.
But you gotta look into that a little bit more, right? Because I think people are pretty unfair to fighting games from that perspective. Cause
yeah,
you're right about Street Fighter 5. So what Street Fighter 5 actually did, this is what the game actually did. I know some people don't like the game, whatever, but Street Fighter 5 did two big things, right? That this is where like a turn changed from Street Fighter 4. They had day one switched to a live service model, right, where they're updating with patches all the time, coming out with new content. It's like it's the only mainstream fighting game that I know that actively updates with costumes and stuff like that. They started focusing more on Capcom Pro Tour and started Street Fighter League, right? So it was their esports push. For people who don't know, the way they used to update games is that, and this is why
whole new versions.
They give you a new version. So because you couldn't patch the game, if they wanted to balance the game, they'd have to make a new version, which means for most people, which you are correct, for most people, having a new like game disc that is just a balance patch for $40, that they're not gonna like that. So they add like a couple of characters, and then those characters get their own mission modes on console, like all this stuff, right? And that would be like the update, and it would be cheaper than the original one, and that's how they used to update. So Street Fighter 4 had like Super Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition 2012, Ultra, right?
Yeah.
But in Street Fighter 5, while Street Fighter 5 has titled updates, they have way more updates than that. They update the game regularly, which is not something that was done before. So that's like the two big things. But I feel like because they went that esports push and they were like, oh, it's live service, so we can put the game out with like versus, and we're good, and people should play. It kind of led to, well, other devs all went like esports route. Like now, you know, there's like Tekken World Tour, Dragon Ball FighterZ had a world tour, Guilty Gear had a world tour, Tag had a world tour, Grand Blue versus, like
Arc Revo.
We didn't get these for Grand Blue, but Grand Blue had like these Japanese nationals with these huge price, not huge, I say big for a fighting game price points, right? So even if other games do something that you like you're like, oh man, Street Fighter sucks, but this game does stuff that I like, You know, what
Yeah.
they all have in common is they all started doing that live service, getting regular patches type beat, all made an attempt to have more like an esports push, like a coordinated tour ran by the publisher, which helps with marketing and stuff like that. That's basically been the main thing, and that's also why I feel like it has seemed like there's been less content, is because they've been pushing in a new way that they haven't had to before. Where all
Right.
like Street Fighter 4 or like Blaze Blue, like Blaze Blue has a whole 30-hour story mode every game.
I know.
Really like story mode.
Yeah.
They have all this extra stuff. So it was something they did do, right? To varying degrees. Like our NRS always has really good story modes.
Right.
Blaze Blue had story mode, stuff like that. But then Persona has a really bad story mode. I'm sorry if you like it.
Oh my god.
Yeah, right. So I think the big thing now is now they're good at all this stuff. So I feel like they're circling back to being like, okay, people stayed with us through this. If we want to grow more, we have to go revisit the audience that helped bring us up, right? Because honestly, it was casuals that propped up SF4, like people who weren't really hardcore players that propped up SF4. So all these extra things with like the lobby and making the single player content accessible, which I think that's where Dragon Ball really, really screwed up. Like in that video I posted, a bunch of comments I got, people didn't know that there was a mission mode. They're like, there's a mission mode in Dragon Ball Fighters, a super in-depth mission mode, by the way, in Dragon Ball Fighters, that you have to talk to some NPC, and they never told anybody that's in the game. It's been in the game for like 3 years.
I remember hearing about it. Like, it was some stream or event that they did, and I remember them talking about it that one time, but it was never pushed afterwards. Yeah. And you like unlocked the quick memory when you brought it up. I was like, oh yeah, that is in Fighters, and I was like, okay. That's something that I really love that Fighters did. Fighters has done a lot. A lot of people acknowledge Fighters now because now people are like, oh, I want the Naruto or the One Piece and things of that nature. It proves that those types of games, like with anime IPs or just IP-driven fighting games, can be in a limelight to a certain degree. If I want to talk about one thing that I'm want to just hear your opinion on, what are your thoughts on like the future of free-to-play versions of fighting games? Because Multiverses, right, that's a game that I am like in like heads and heels over. Like I love it, but it's like at the same time, because there's some decisions that they made, and it's not even just Multiverses decisions, it's like Warner Bros. That's a lot of other factors with that game. But I think Multiverses has proved that there's a huge market for free-to-play fighting games, having over 150k concurrent players. And, we could use it now as beta is kind of crazy. And having over, 20 million downloads within the first month and a half to 2 is crazy. Smash Bros. Was like that, and it took, the amount of time it did. So I think free-to-play fighting games could be a huge future to the genre in its entirety. How do you feel about that?
Shadows lurking in the background, right?
Yeah.
Because Project L is going to be free to play also. Whatever it is like for the main games, like the ones that we expect to be coming out, I think they're going to kind of be sticking with this. You buy the game for 50-60 and then you get a bunch of updates for free type thing.
Yeah.
For a while, I would say. Multiverses was really, really interesting. Fun game. I played a lot. Up until like I want to say October or so. Pretty fun game. Those stats were like all really cool. That game had the same type of like like every fighting game like kind of like falls off.
Yeah.
Falls off. It's the wrong word. Like it's a user retention thing, right?
Yes, it's retention. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a thing to show that like it's never that like, oh, fighting games are too small or too niche. That's why I think that fighting games have a future. So I remember when I said that about like the IPs and stuff, and people like, oh, what about indie this or whatever. I'm like, dude, those games are always going to be there, right? All of us can get it. Right. And one thing that's nice about fighting games is like, this is gonna be a weird one, but like let's say like you were telling me you were playing Xenoblade. I also played. I'm playing Xenoblade 3.
Yes.
And okay, let's say you really like Xenoblade 3, so you want to play like Xenoblade 2. So you go get Xenoblade 2, you get that, you play that for like 80, you beat that. If you're cool, you're cool. Then you go play Xenoblade 1, you do it again. If you only want to play a story, like that's it, right? Where in a fighting game, you could, if you felt like it, for example, one game that people play is like the Sailor Moon Fighter on SNES.
Yeah.
Like you could play that, and as long as you have a group of friends to play that with, you can play that forever, basically. You know.
Yeah.
So it's not like you like there's no dead game, right? Like
right.
as long as you have a group of people to
God,
play with,
I hate that. I hate that so much.
Right? So what I'm saying is, like, when I say stuff like, oh, all that's going to be coming out as far as mainline releases are going to be like legacy IPs and like licensed IPs, people are like, oh, that's like death to creativity in fighting games. But no, that's not true, because one, there's always going to be indie devs, and two, there are always going to be games that are popular that are not updated still, like ACR. Like people put my feelings about ACR aside, there are always going to be people who love ACR, who grind ACR. They're just going to be playing it. They can play it forever, right? They don't need Guilty Gear 5, right? Let's say they don't need that. They could and can just play ACR. So that's one thing that's unique to fighting games. I would say that's actually a strength.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of especially Arcsys, retrofit and roll back into their games, because I come from Blaze Blue primarily. I'm primarily CF and cross tag. Yeah, so for me, I'm like, okay, if they make a new one, hopefully, I'll be like, if people don't like it, and I know people get mad when they say this, you can play the old games, but I think the beauty here with fighting games compared to something like Call of Duty, for example, it's always a trend to go to the next Call of Duty or move to the next game, or even Call of Duty will shut down one of their biggest games for another version of it. Like right now, I don't even think you can play Warzone, the original. You can only play Warzone 2. I think most of the maps and stuff are different. Whereas with like Call of Duty, you can always play these games, the old ones with the servers and stuff on it. But the big emphasis about buying a new Call of Duty is grinding it and playing with your friends. Right? Most people are Modern Warfare 2, not going back to like, Vanguard or something like that. I know I'm talking like gibberish, but in a way, it's like fighting games are kind of like immortalized. That's why, like, even as a niche esport, it's always been around the longest than a lot of other games that have came and gone. There's so much to always reference and go back to, and that's the beauty of fighting games. And I think this next generation will probably be one of the stronger fighting games generations we have in a long while, at least in terms of pushing the popularity forward, because now they're trying to bridge the gap between the casual perspective and communities, and also making sure that games last and longevity. And I think that's the big thing that's beautiful about the future of fighting games, especially like how you brought up the point with Street Fighter, because I say it a lot and people be like, oh, you're shilling, but that beta of Street Fighter 6, if they dropped that and they was like, here, we gonna just update it like whatever, I'd be fine with it, because I was having fun. I haven't really grinded fighting game personally since Melty Blood, and playing that beta, it was weird because I'm a person that just loves everything, but my favorite genres are RPGs and fighting games. And when PlayStation brought out the wrap and it said I had 50 hours in the Street Fighter 6 beta, my brain was kind of confused. I was like, did I really play that much of a beta? And for a lot, that might not be a lot to some people, but for me, I think when you spend more than 100 hours in the game, you like it to an extent, people be on Twitter like, this game sucks, and then you look at the hours, they got like 1,000 hours in it. That's me with Smash Ultimate. Like, I got like 3,000 hours in that game, and I'm like, I don't like it, but there's some truth there. I liked it enough to keep playing it to that extent. So I don't know. I think that's pretty good to hear. But the last question I have, and this one might be a loophole, because I know you've probably answered this multiple times, or maybe not. But what would you want Arcsys' next big project to be?
Honestly, they could do whatever, because I a couple things. Like I'm not really like an Arcsys show. I know it might be funny, but I mostly play their games 'cause I just like them.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
think they're interesting games. You know,
Okay.
they're interesting. They have interesting character designs. I actually there is a timeline where like I'm like a Street Fighter player, but I remember playing Street Fighter 4 in arcades, and I just wasn't. I was like, this game is mad boring. Like what do you mean? Bro? Like I'm just sitting here and like I mean the good players in the city would beat me, but I was just beating everybody, just spamming fireballs. I was like, yeah, this takes skill. So I just stopped playing. I didn't realize what was hard about games like that back then. Now I get what's hard about it. But
yeah, okay.
So you know they could just drop whatever, but you know like how can you screw up? Like they don't. If they go the Dragon Ball path, this is what I'm saying. Like they can win in both aspects. If they want to reuse an old IP, I mean they could just make another Guilty Gear game in a couple years. They could make another BlazBlue game in a couple years, even if that guy left. They could make another BlazBlue game. So you have that aspect, or they can just go up to other licenses and be like, "Hey, we could just make a game for you, LMAO," and who's gonna be mad about that?
Right,
you know,
because it's gonna be their favorite series.
Yeah, if they randomly make like a Jujutsu Kaisen fighting game or like a One Piece fighting game, who's gonna be mad at that? Nobody. Everyone's gonna be hyped for that. So I feel like that it's just they can't lose if they use that strategy. That's why I think that's all the big companies are gonna do is that because you can't lose.
Right. It's like just stick to what you got and what you're good at and just build upon it. You won't lose in this space. I think that's interesting. Because for me, when it comes to Arcsys, like, I think for me, if I wanted something, I really want Naruto. Like like even if you want to do a numbers thing, like, and it sucks because CC2 has it, you know, with Naruto Storm. But looking at the numbers, Naruto Storm has outdone Xenoverse and Fighters in terms of like I think it's in the top 10 best-selling games. They're at 10.7 million.
You gotta go to 1-to-1 though, because I would say that it being better than Xenoverse is a bigger deal than it being better than Fighters. Because they thought Fighters was gonna fail when they launched it.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, so Fighters is not like
the end all be all.
It's a traditional fighting game.
Yeah.
Where Xenoverse and the Naruto games are a different lane, I would say.
Yeah. The last question I would ask you about, how do you feel about arena fighters?
They're not for me, really. You know, I played Kill la Kill.
Okay.
I played what's the other one I tried to play?
Was it My Hero?
No. Okay. No, I forget the other. Kill la Kill was the one I grinded Kill la Kill for a while.
Yeah.
They just like they're fun, but like they don't feel like as crisp. They don't feel as they just don't feel like as put together. You know.
Okay.
Like, they have like a good basic system, but like I don't know. They just feel kind of just not for me, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
So essentially, the big issue I see with fighting games content, at least on like YouTube, etc., is we don't have people like playing through the games for the story, etc., and pushing it. It's more so like on a surface level, you know, besides you and you know the other big creators, it's more so like, all right, here's match footage or here's a meme of something that happened in the match footage. What would you think would be the best way for a person that just falls in love with Street Fighter 6 to make content on it? Should they just talk about the story? Should they just try to make it memey? You know, someone in the vein like Light Throw? What would be your perspective on that?
I mean, it would depend on what you want to do and what aspect of the game you want to engage with, right? Like, Strive has plenty of single player content that people don't really use, right? Like, there's I should say don't use it because that's not correct, but where content creators, I should say, don't like address. Like, there's things like there's combo maker mode, there's figurine mode, there's a whole mission mode. It does have a lot of story aspects. So I would say just make content about the aspect of the game that you want to talk about, right? The main things is that why there's so many match videos, because a lot of people play matches.
Yeah.
You know?
Like,
yeah. So
it's one of those things because it's been a huge conversation about with a lot of different creators. I have a lot of friends that do content in the space, and you know, some people feel like, some people feel like, yeah, I'm not a pro player. Why would they watch me? And I feel like that's a weird mentality to have, especially because what I look at for content, and I'm a big Smash person, but I think what I look at for content is how Smash creators made their content. And of course, like, I think Guilty Gear came up a little bit, like seeing how y'all do your thumbnails, things of that. That's beautiful. So seeing that type of thing happen within the space for fighting game content and seeing people evolve, it's very, very cool to see how people evolve from that. But some people feel like, why should I make this video if I'm not a pro player? Because people feel like, hey, people just gonna discredit my opinion or things of that nature. But my whole argument to that is just put up a good argument. Give me information, you know?
Exactly.
So that's how I feel.
Yeah. Like I said, I feel like you should just do what you want to engage with, right? Because here you go. Like, I had the opposite thing, where when I was starting on YouTube, a lot of the people who I was talking to, because let's say, like you said, you had a circle of like casual friends you play fighting games with, like, for fun. So I have a circle of friends who are all like tournament players, right? Like longtime tournament players, and they're all like, "Dude, no one gives a fuck about any." Okay, curse. Whoops.
No, you can, yeah.
Okay, good. All right, yeah. But no one gives a fuck about this thing you want to talk about. Like, that's way too advanced, or like no one cares about that. Like, why would someone want to watch a video about this like niche aspect of a match or something, right?
Right.
So people will find a reason to tell you no one's gonna care no matter what. Like right? Like,
yeah.
You said, oh, why would people care about my opinion if I'm not good? Some people look at me like I'm good at the game, and I had people being like, why would anyone care about you talking about this thing in the game? So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
So
there are people who are really good at the game who say the only content that people care about are like casual content. By people who don't know how to play. So right. I got the backwards thing, because people like, you're good at the game. Why would anyone want to watch your videos? Yeah. Right. So it doesn't matter. Just do.
I'm not. That's insane. Because in my mind, I'm like, why wouldn't you just watch the pro player video on something? That was literally where my head was at. Like, till you said that, I was like, okay.
It was a really common take. Very, very, very common take amongst high level players. That take. And I actually agree with them, and I had to, instead of like just because you see it from experience too, right? Like, you would see people like make videos about stuff. So the thing is, I just went an extra step to figure out, how do I take some topic that, because you have to stand out too. So it's like, how do I take some topic that either people haven't made a video about, or something that is like kind of advanced and like a more established but more beginner focused content creator, like, you know, like someone like Rufomonger, for example. Yeah. Someone, he wouldn't do a video on that. So how would I take something like that and make it into something that's watchable and easy to digest? Okay. And that was my strategy.
Yeah. That see your strategy is broken, because like, you make me. All right, I'm gonna be honest. I've been holding in for the. I do not like Strive. Okay, so but I watch the content. I watch all the videos, because you title them like, this is how you do this for dummies, like in an example, right? And it just catches me every time I see a video pop up in my sub box or my home page, because I'm like, how did he turn, like, your first video that started making me fall in love with your content was a Lychee video. Lychee's my favorite character. So I'm watching the video like, all right, I know LK knows. And then as I say that, you say it in the video, but the title of the video was so like just straightforward. It just worked, and it just made me want to watch it.
Yeah, I think that was like she shows all of the problems with the game or something.
Yeah,
which is true.
And I was sitting there like, dang. She is a problem. And then it made me think about it, because I was complaining about it in cross tag. I was like, why is she not there? Right? And I know certain characters are not there because cross tag it's too hard, and some of the moves, you can't do all those moves in cross tag. It's just impossible. Same with Bane. So I was like pissed about it for a long period of time. I was like, just give me her, and I'll have my favorite fighting game roster ever, because I'm a Ruby shield. Okay, I tell everybody get mad when I say that. I'm like, oh, you like Ruby? I'm like, okay. You like something else that people don't like. But when you made that video, it made me think. I was like, damn. All right, I ain't that mad no. I'm not that salty no. But I was like, he got it. LK got it. So yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about today, though. I don't want to hold you up.
No, of course, thank you.
Yeah. That being said, everybody go check out LK. His channel will be in the description down below. You know, follow him on Twitter as well. All that information will be in the description. But I want y'all to know, you guys are golden, and that is raw. Squarla, peace, and I'm out.
I've been a devil, I need me an arc in the heart. Am I breathing? I feel like time's roll. Walking this bitch with a soundbox, I wanna see rocket. I keep me a domino. Bitch, on my dick, man, I feel like Kazaki. Stretching that pussy out like it's Pilates. I'm snatching the soul like right out of a body. Fire, I'm spitting, I'm feeling like Dobby. White bitch, blonde hair, looking like Lucy. She from Kyoshi, I paint her face Suki.